This week on the Sunday Glide, we'll be walking through how the boards you're surfing might be hiding the mistakes you're making out in the water, and what we can do to target these areas and improve your surfing. We'll then be stepping through to a rider mole edit. We'll be surfing longboards, shortboards and mid-lengths. We'll then be finishing off with the last segment, Tip Time, where we do a deep dive into your questions. Okay, so in today's edit, what I really wanted to speak about is how longboarding, in the fact that the boards are a bit bigger and they're a bit more stable and forgiving, how this can actually help to hide some of our mistakes or maybe some of our weaknesses in our surfing. I do think that there's a really good learning opportunity for both if you're on a longboard, on a shortboard as well. Because I think it's really important to understand and consider the things we're about to chat about in terms of position on the wave, position on the board, and how we distribute our weight. One of the reasons I really love longboarding is because it is very forgiving, and I guess the way that the boards trim through the water, everything feels nice and easy, you get a nice glide going. But what can happen with this is sometimes we might not position our boards in the correct part of the wave. And I guess we don't see the consequences of that as much as we would on another board. So I feel like sometimes we can keep ourselves to longboarding, and what ends up happening is if we do transfer over to another board, like we do to a mid-length, or if we hop on a shortboard, then what can happen is we actually struggle a little bit more on those boards because we haven't quite got that foundation of where we should be positioning ourselves on the wave. With respect to, being nice and critical and things like that. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to touch on and go over. And then I also wanted to speak about was, I guess, how we can position ourselves on the board the best way possible on a longboard to make sure we've got as much speed as possible, and then how this differs to, I guess, the other boards that we can be riding, like shortboards and mid-lengths again. So the number one mistake, and it's really easy to make when we hop on a longboard, and the longboard, as I said, is quite good at being quite forgiving, and we're still able to make it work, but we actually stay quite low on the wave. I guess if we think about a wave here, we can see that if we keep in the top 2/3 of the wave, typically our speed should be okay. This is where the wave will be the steepest, and that's actually where we're going to get all of our acceleration and all of our speed. Once we come low on the wave, from the bottom third all the way through to the flats, we actually lose all of our speed, and it's a really difficult place to, I guess, have any glide, drive, momentum going forwards. And quite often on a typical board, if we do stay in this bottom part of the wave, especially if the wave's fast and we need to race it, we're going to get caught behind and we're going to lose that. Now, what a longboard is good at doing is quite often, if the wave isn't too fast, we can still travel along the wave okay. And I think this is what I'm getting at when I'm saying the longboards can sometimes hide some of the things that maybe we should be, just being aware of and trying to improve. Because if our positioning's not correct, we're really going to feel that as soon as we pop over onto any other equipment. So if we did that same thing on a shortboard, so instead of staying in that top 2/3 of the wave, we came down low and we tried to trim, or we tried to go along the wave face at the bottom of the wave, then what would happen is straight away you'll be able to notice we'd be losing all of our speed, the board would be wobbling, and it'd be really hard to drive any kind of speed forwards, and the wave will just rush off without us and we'll be left in the white water. Two sort of things that I'd be telling people to consider, or to be considering no matter what board you're on, is making sure that you are staying in that top half of the wave. It's really important to gain your speed, and it also opens up so many doors for when you're trying to do different things like turns, nose rides. That's where all of these maneuvers are done as well. The bottom of the wave face is really only used for, stalling for the barrel or for completing your bottom turns. So it's very important that we do stay up nice and high on the wave for all of these maneuvers. And even if the longboard is pretty forgiving and it allows you to surf along the wave at the bottom of the wave face, I think you'll notice that it'll be really beneficial to bring yourself a little bit further up to gain speed. Now, the other thing that I think we do need to be considering as well is our position on the board. And so where should we be positioned on the board to gain speed, to turn, and how this can differ as well. So I'm sure if many of you have longboarded, which I'm guessing you have, and then gone from a shortboard to a longboard, the weight transference between your front and back foot is very different. On a shortboard, we're in one solid position, and so your feet aren't moving too much, and if you want to accelerate, you're leaning forwards. If you want to brake, we lean backwards. Now, what we do on a longboard is quite often we get caught in this no man's land, where we've got weight on the front foot, and if we place our weight over the front foot, we're not really placing it into the middle of the board to drive that speed, to build that momentum. But if we place our weight on the tail, we might also not be right back over the fin or over that pivot point, and our turns might not be as dynamic as we need them, and we might bog a rail for that reason. So it's the difference between, on a shortboard, you can simply just transfer your weight forwards and backwards, depending on whether you want to accelerate or turn or stall. And on a longboard, I spoke about this a little bit in my last edit, but hopefully we're using our cross steps to move up and down the board as well for this reason. You can see all of the top longboarders, there's this really nice dance and interplay between coming from the middle of the board where they're gaining their speed, cross-stepping back to do a turn, then coming back to the middle of the board to accelerate. And so I think it is really important to make sure we know the difference between being on a longboard and shortboard in terms of where our weight distribution is. It's great to make sure we can learn to cross-step, not only to access the nose, but to access these different areas of the board so that we know how to maneuver along the board to put ourselves in the right position on the board for the right maneuvers that we're doing. And then going back to what we just spoke about before, if we can alter our position on the board effectively and we can alter our position on the wave effectively to stay nice and high where we need to be, I think, again, opens a lot of doors for our surfing. And then we've got, yes, a world of opportunity with regards to the maneuvers that we can complete and just how confident and comfortable we feel riding that wave as well. So for the next part of the video, we're going to head over to a quick edit, essentially a mixture of a lot of the waves or the good waves I've had on a few different equipment. So that'll include longboards, shortboards and mid-lengths. Fun putting that together, and it was good to look back on, you know, the different approach. I take quite a longboard approach on a lot of my boards, I reckon. But yeah, that's just because I guess I'm so geared towards that with longboarding lots. And then what we'll do is we'll go through tip time as well, where I dive into your questions and we can have a bit of a chat about that. So let's move into the edit and we'll catch you guys soon. Okay, so I just wanted to dive into the questions now, so we'll do our segment tip time. So the question that we had was from Trombone Al. I hope I got that right. But essentially it was about, is nose riding easier on heavier boards? And I think it's a really good question, and something that, yeah, probably I haven't thought about a great deal in terms of, I guess, how does nose riding differ on a lighter board to the heavier boards? Is it the dimensions of the board that plays more of a part, or is it, yeah, the weight that does play a big part of it as well? So I've been having a bit of a think about it, just in terms of the boards I've ridden, and I think it actually hits a really good point for me at the moment, having just switched to another board. So the board that I'm on currently, the one that I introduced in the last video, which is super fun, and it's something that's a little bit more dynamic than the boards I've had previously, but it is a little bit lighter as well, just a smidge. And so what I've actually noticed with nose riding that board as opposed to a couple of my other boards, so that pink board, that's got a little bit more weight to it, and I've also got this red 9.6 Stylemaster from South Coast Surfboards that, you know, I've ridden in a couple of the videos, and that was one of the first boards I got from South Coast. That was an amazing board, but that's a heavy board. That's around 9 kilos. And I think the biggest thing that I could tell you about the difference there is that you feel with a heavy board that you're much more locked in place, and we're not going to be able to alter our position or maneuver from the hips and the ankles as much as you can with a board that's a little bit lighter. So just going on feeling, I feel like with a heavier board, once you get the board in place, it feels like it's a little bit more locked into that one spot. If you've got a lighter board, it feels a little bit more twitchy, and so there's the benefits and probably some cons to that. The benefits are that in terms of steering from the nose, so if you want to do a solid box 10, have one foot on one side of the rail and one foot on the other side of the rail when you are hanging 10, you can use your hips, the knees, the ankles to really guide and steer, I suppose, the nose of the board and the position that's in with respect to the wave. So placing weight more into the outside rail or the inside rail, depending on how you need to navigate that nose ride to make it extend out a little bit more. And that's going to be a little bit harder on the heavier boards. So I'd say that's definitely a benefit. The con would probably be more around the fact that you don't feel as secure, and maybe you're not feeling as locked in. So I think not all the time. If you've got the perfect section and you've got nice lift through that nose and there's a lot of water that's being hauled back onto the tail, then I think absolutely you're going to feel a nice locked in sensation. But I'm thinking it might not just feel so secure as it does with a heavy board. Now, I think in terms of what I would prefer for nose riding, typically I probably do prefer a little bit of a middle balance, which is sort of what I have with the more brown board that I've got now, the pink board prior. Because, you know, it's not so light that it feels too twitchy and it won't hold in place. It's got a lot of surface area on the nose, so I can navigate and steer from the nose if I want to, but it's not so heavy that it feels like I'm just kind of at the board's will and I can't shift or maneuver when I need to on the nose. So, you know, I'm really liking how they're feeling, and I love it for that reason. But really good question, and I think that's something that I probably need to delve into a little bit more in terms of my knowledge and my understanding in that area. I'd be very interested to hear if any of you guys have any different takes on that, if it does actually help to pull a heavier board, pulls you back into the pocket a little bit more. That'd be interesting to see, but I just don't know all of the, I guess, the nuances there, so would be interested to hear from any of you guys about that if you did have any thoughts on that. That's it for today. If you guys have any questions that you'd like me to touch on for next week's segment in Tip Time, let me know. Leave the questions in the comments below and we can have a little chat about that. But otherwise, hope you guys are getting waves, and yeah, there's some waves at your home breaks, and we'll see you soon.